Hey guys, I'm Ethan, co-host of the Shieldwall podcast. First off, thank you guys so much for listening. I wanted to ask all of you who enjoy our content to subscribe and comment wherever you listen. Follow us on social media. We're on all major platforms. If you have any episode suggestions or questions, definitely shoot us an email at ShieldwallMinistries@gmail.com.
Welcome to the Shieldwall podcast, where tempered men are formed.
All right, everybody, we're back with another episode of the Shieldwall podcast. This is one of your co-hosts tonight, Cody. I'm by myself, but not really. I've got a friend with me. I got someone special, someone who I've been seeing and watching on social media, who I've probably copied and emulated a little bit my style. Just the way that honestly, I took your 3 bars and I used that in one of my Instagram posts. I don't know if you noticed that. Maybe you did. But I got Mr. Dawain on the other end. He is the founder and curator of the Biblical and Reform Podcast Network. Dawain, introduce yourself. Talk about you for 1 second. Who are you?
1 second. My name is Dawain Atkinson. Okay. So, my name is Dawain. I am a resident of South Carolina, husband of 1 wife, 4 kids. And I started a podcast about to be 3 years ago, and it's growing into a network, and we also have apparel, and God has just been really good, man. That's me in a nutshell.
So where can people find your work? Both your podcast and
you can find, so you can find all of my, if you go to the B.A.R.podcast.com, you'll get links to the apparel. You also find all of our social media links there as well, the B.A.R.podcast.com. And the B.A.R. stands for Biblical and Reform, not Black and Reform. Some might think that.
Did that not start off that way? I heard that. Mr. Joe Thorne, I'll throw him out there, said that's what you originally called it. Is that true?
Yeah,
not true?
So the thing is, the thing about Joe and Jimmy, if you tell them something, it definitely will get repeated. So just
that's how I heard
understand that, listeners. But no, we were throwing around ideas in the inbox, and it was a brief thing. Like, we liked the acronym, because at the time is when I think, we were all kind of discovering Reformed theology and biblical theology. And one of the resources was RAN, which was the
rest in peace.
Reform, Reform African American Network. So we was thinking like, Black and Reformed, and it didn't make it past the inbox. I mean, it probably was like a little 2 threads down. It was like, oh no, we're not going to do that. So that is partly true.
Yeah. Do you still follow what has morphed into what they do now? Because it's different.
The Witness?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't follow it. When you're Reformed and you are African American or Black, first thing you do is look for people, that look like you're just a natural thing. And RAN was one of the things that I found in the early stages. But since, leadership change, name change, and, a shift from, where they originally started, we don't follow them too close.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a public process as well. I mean, we're not here to talk about them, but they had a change. They declared themselves going towards another witness. So, where did the concept of wanting to start a network of podcasters come from? I'm curious about that because I've looked and I've kind of seen you develop that. I go on your website, I can kind of see who you have surrounded around you. You got some really great fellows. You got the Just Thinking podcast, which you and I have interchanged some conversations before, and you know that I appreciate those guys. I listened to all their episodes. It was kind of sad when, one of the brothers got a job from the East Coast and took some time off to go over to another ministry.
Yeah.
But I went back and listened to some of the older episodes. But how'd that start? How'd you start getting a network involved?
So before the podcast, and originally that inbox group came from a team I developed pretty much 100% virtual, called Be Not Deceived. And a lot of people may know that Facebook page. And you probably seen articles, calling out false teachers or whatever. But years ago, I developed that page and surrounded myself with people that were saying the things that I was saying. And everybody part of that, the whole team pretty much is talented, and, God is blessed. And so when I started the B.A.R podcast, it originally supposed to be like a panel of, all of us talking every day. But as you know, people's schedules get busy. And so I was inspired to just kind of take it and run with it, because it's something I really wanted to do. And then once I established my platform, then I went back and grabbed my team and, gave them opportunities to build their own, so it originally is just people that I've known for a while over online. And in the last year, we opened it up to, a complete outsider, which is pastor discussion. And we pretty much put them through a very strenuous process of just evaluating, looking at their, work and seeing if it would be a good fit for us. So, but that's pretty much how we came up with the network.
Now I'm looking on Facebook right now. Be Not Deceived has over 28,000 likes. That's a pretty big following. And that's in Greenville. Is that where you're at?
Yeah. I'm in the Greenville, Spartanburg area right now. Yep.
And so coming from that to where you're at with the B.A.R Podcast Network, your involvement in that directly, how are you overseeing that, taking care of the theology, the culture that might be drawing from that? Because if you go on your Instagram and your Facebook, you got folks everywhere wearing your clothes, your hats. You'll want people to be tagged in like Ligonier and the Shepherd Conference, like throw your gear up. I've seen those.
Yeah.
And you got people who are like all over. So
yeah,
how do you make sure that the name, the B.A.R Network, the B.A.R Podcast is staying above reproach and it's being used appropriately? Mainly, I'm getting at that our topic tonight is biblical unity. How do you keep biblical unity in a network like this, where you got, you're not in a church locally, but you're in a group that's all over the nation digitally? Yeah.
So first, I guess I'll start with my team. We stay pretty much communion, conversation. We are deeply connected on that level, where we pretty much talk every day. We've had conversations where we was like, man, we're closer to each other than we are to, people that we see every day. So on that level, the unity comes from just the fellowship and relationship that we have. But as far as like the B.A.R brand and, like you said, seeing the stuff everywhere. And that was one of the compliments I got from a vendor that does a lot of conferences. Like, man, I see your stuff everywhere. With that, I think it's just more or less I feel like the B.A.R is relatable. Yeah. And so that relatability makes people feel like they're part of a community, and and make them want to rep. Like, so I feel like they're all kind of part of my team. When you rock the B.A.R hat, you're advertising, you're letting people know about the B.A.R, and you're doing work, that benefits, the podcast and the movement and the idea. So that sense of community internationally, by God's grace, I'm excited to say, is just a blessing and humbling. I don't necessarily try to control it. I just stay true to me. And I think, if people relate to that and, they feel like they can follow that, or, they can put it on their head or on their chest, relate to that whole idea, then it's all good with me.
And I said earlier on when we were opening up, people don't know who I am. Your people that follow you, they don't know who I am, and I'm not trying to get a name for this, but I literally saw your 3 bars, and I saw that, and it's like kind of iconic to me, and I took those and I put it on an image for another project I'm working on called the Remnant Outpost, and I just love the way it looked. I put the Remnant Outpost in 3 separate areas, and I'm not publishing that yet. That hasn't really fully developed, but I took it and I just switched it over to what I'm currently working on, which is the Shield Wall podcast. This is what you're on right now. To you, that's an homage to you. Because I definitely
I appreciate that.
I mean, that's thievery. I'm confessing to you, but you do have the 3 bars.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Because Joe Thorne, he want to bring up my past of want to calling it black, but Joe Thorne actually designed my logo.
So it goes to Joe.
Yeah, it goes to Joe, man. He actually came up with the logo, the 3 bars, and I kind of ran with it. And he's so gracious, man. This is before Doc and Devo, before all of that. We were in the inbox talking, and he was talking to me about branding and all of that because I had no idea. And so he created those the logo with the 3 bars, and it's been iconic, man. So much so, like, there's also a I don't know if it's Indian or Hindu marking where they put 3 lines across their forehead, and this guy was doing like I guess a inspirational talk, and he had the 3 lines. Somebody like, yo, he's repping the bar. I was like, no, I don't know what that is, bro. Like, that's not me.
That's a whole nother thing. I rebuke that. No,
right.
But it reminded me, maybe it's because it's Joe, but it reminded me of the 4 bars up and down from Black Flag. It's a punk band. Maybe that's where Joe stole it from. It's up and down.
It may be
though.
his inspiration. Yeah.
But anyway, I just want to say that, you probably even knew it when you saw that picture. You were like, hey, that looks familiar. And it's because it does. It's because, I tip my hat to you a little bit.
No, I appreciate that. But, it's actually also on, I don't know if you use Canva, but they have that as one of their
that's probably where I got
defaults.
it from.
Yeah, they have that one of their defaults, man. So I can't take for all the credit, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. I really do.
But I've been watching. I've listened to some of the guys in your podcast. I've listened to you. We've had brief conversations back and forth. I've asked you about merch. You've been very generous. You gave me a website to go out to. You've encouraged me to start that. You gave me parameters which to look into. One of the ones you called the digital trucking or something like that.
Yes, sir. Digital trunk.
There it was. And I haven't done that yet, but we've got the ideas. I've ordered mugs and we've got stuff, but I just did them one at a time. But no, that's encouraging to know that here I am, just a random dude that just, I've got my own podcast with a friend, and I come to you and I just ask you basic questions, and there's no feeling at all like I'm crowding out in your space or I'm taking over anything that you already established. I just came over and I asked questions, and you were so willing to just give away just basic stuff. And that biblical unity to me immediately sparked off like, hey, this guy's got the heart that wants to expand the kingdom, and he wants to see influence, good biblical and reformed influence. And so I tip my hat to you. And you said you keep yourself real. That's how you don't really govern the whole network. But, I mean, you can't help the fact that the Lord is keeping you grounded, and the Lord is keeping you theologically grounded, and you're surrounding yourself with pretty solid dudes. How are you keeping up with that?
So, I mean, that's it's all about God's grace, man. And I want to kind of back up a little bit and talk about my willingness to share for those that are listening. At the end of the day, it's not a competition to me. And when I started, so many people were like very tight-lipped about stuff. Like, I literally had to grind and scratch and, fail and all of that to find the right things, the right companies, the right software. And once I did, man, I promised that I would never be that way to anybody that's looking, and so that's why I saw what you guys were doing, and I was like, yo, how can I help, because nobody helped me. Nobody, I wouldn't say nobody. Joe Thorne was a big help, but as
he's
far as like
help.
real
He's
details, he's a little guy. That is true. But as far as like just detail and just figuring stuff out, man, I didn't get much help, and so I just wanted to make sure, like you said, when it comes to being unified and letting people know that I'm not in this to be the number one or the best, or I'm in this to give God glory. If my niche is 5 people and we strong, I'm good. So I don't look at people coming into podcasting. I encourage people to podcast. I mean, it's the future. I don't look at people selling merch, as competition. I encourage you to sell merch. There's no money in podcasts, so that's kind of my idea on that. But going back to your question about how do I kind of, I guess, maintain or keep the team together, soldiers together, and as well as, God guiding me, man, it's just a personal, personal relationship, personal devotion, taking time out in the mornings, to have some time with God, checking up on my network folks, seeing what they need. How can I help them? How can I pray for them? Things of that nature, which are, it seems simple and small, but those are the things that has kept us, over this time and allowed us to grow stronger. And, finding right people, because Daryl wasn't a part of that original fold. I found Daryl when he started blogging, and I had him on as a guest, and, I think I have blessed with a sixth sense of, knowing what works when it comes to podcasting. And as soon as I heard Daryl and paired him with Virgil, I knew I had something special. Same with Constance and Truth and Fire. When I interviewed
Love that
her,
name, by the
I knew
way.
she had something special. Yeah, man. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if
and
the
a
play
lot of
on
people don't know.
the Greek on that, like the truth and the fire, the truth and the judgment. I don't know if that's the play on there.
Yeah.
I love that.
I have no idea. She had the blog already,
Mm-hmm.
and she had the personality, and I knew that was going to be an awesome podcast. And a lot of people don't know she's actually in the documentary American Gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in that documentary because she always goes by her Twitter, Instagram handle, which is like Truth and Fire in French, and I don't know how to say it like she said, but yeah.
That's awesome. And we'll link her in this as well at the very end, because I've just started to get involved with listening to some of her stuff, and I'm blown away.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't have never. She's not on my radar because my radar is small, and I can just return back to the things that I like. And I love how you've exposed personally to me some guys I probably would have never listened to. They're not on my radar.
Exactly.
And these are people who are not sponsored by huge ministries, or they don't have book deals. They're not on circuits. They're just regular folk that basically have come together and said, no, we've got a unified message. And the best part is it's good. Like the quality of it's good. Like that part for me, that means a lot. Like the product, the end result, it sounds good. And the content is good. I want to return back to it. That's good that the Lord's been blessing you and giving you that. You call them soldiers, surrounding you with the soldiers. And
yeah, man.
Another question, personal question. So you say you're married, you have kids. Back up a little bit for me. How'd you come to the Lord? How'd the Lord save you? We know that you're predestined, but what's that look like? What's your story?
So, yeah, man. Grew up in a little town called Turkey, North Carolina. Very small, no stoplights, just a caution light, real country background. But I was blessed with the talent of playing drums and playing sports. And so I was the athlete / musician. And so that came with, the women. That was my thing. That was my pride, I was a womanizer and could brag about having multiple women. And I think I was at the age of 25, and literally life was going in a spiral. I had dropped out of college, working at a factory. At the time, I had a girl pregnant, and the old. I have to be careful when I say this. The phone system where you call somebody and then they call somebody and then they call you. We call it three-way.
Three-way.
I had to break it down like that because I was on a podcast and I was like, yeah, man, I got caught up on three-way. They was like, huh? What? Like, no, not like that.
It's a phone system.
The phone system. So I was at my mom's house laying on the bed in my bedroom, man, and the two ladies called me at the same time. I didn't know one was on, and I'm speaking my little Mac game, and then the other one chime in. Was like, and so it's funny because God used that to crush me, like, because my pride was my ability to play the game, and getting caught up and getting pretty much exposed that night. I literally rolled off the bed onto my knees, and I said, Lord, I'm doing nothing but destroying my life. I need you to save me. And, that was my special day, that he came into my heart and changed me. And I wish I could say happily ever after, but, that definitely was a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's the story of us, though, man. That's not happily ever after. It's him, sanctifying us even through that struggle of sinning, and he disciplines those whom he loves. And like with anything, the momentary discipline is uncomfortable, but if he truly loves you and you are his son, he's going to give you every measure of his love to correct you, to refine you, to make the crooked path straight. From there, you moved on. You became a Christian. You struggles, obviously, but you met your wife. I mean, you had kids.
Yeah.
What's the rest of your story on that one?
Yeah. So, and part of the not so happy ever after, dealing with, sanctification and all of that. But another part was dealing with bad theology and bad doctrine.
I'm interested in that.
Whenever
What's that look like?
Yeah, I'm going there. So at the time I was attending a missionary Baptist church, but at the time when you look at the TV, T.D. Jakes, this great black man speaking, and then Joe Osteen, this great positive message, and Creflo Dollar. So I was really
world
heavy.
changers.
Yeah, man, I was really heavy into pretty much TBN preachers, and I met my wife on MySpace, and she actually attended one of the biggest churches in South Carolina, Redemption World Outreach Center, and we pretty much fell in love after the first visit, and literally this church, I jumped right into it, and I was, head first. It was another TBN church, prosperity gospel, word of faith, speaking in tongues, and I was pretty much all the way in, man, thinking, I was going to be the next, whatever, prophet, apostle, all of that, man. And I pretty much, just was all in. And I actually connected with a quote unquote apostle out of Dallas, Texas, while I was still at this church. And I took their ministry class or spiritual class. And at the end of the class, they're supposed to tell you what fivefold ministry gift you have. And actually my giftings lined up as an apostle. So I graduated their course. And people started calling me Apostle. Amazing. I know. It's crazy to think about.
That's going to be your nickname for me.
Yeah,
I call you now. What's up,
oh,
Apostle?
my God. See, I don't know why I hang myself up like that, man. 'Cause every time I tell the story, people ride it and ride it and ride it.
You're just a messenger.
So, hey.
You're an apostle. I'm not going to give you anything for that. I think that's a good confession. Along the way, we fall into these traps, man. And there's some stuff I'm not going to talk about that I got into immediately when I became saved. But that is, I can understand that. But you got to the point where you're in Dallas. Did you pay for it? Did you pay for that test?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course I paid for the course.
It
was not free. You can't be
You
apostle
sowed into
for
the
free,
kingdom,
man.
right? That's what I'm saying.
Of course.
Sorry.
Of course.
But you paid for it. But, when did you find out that Jesus already paid for all that and he already established that the apostles came? Like, what happened when you figured it out? Were your apostle skills not on par with what you thought they'd be?
Well, it always was a hard thing to swallow. It never really sat right with me, in the back of my mind. But that actually is what birthed the Be Not Deceived page, was me just questioning things that was going on, questioning the manipulating.
See, that makes more sense to me now. All right. So that makes a lot of sense now. Yep.
Yeah, that's the journey. Yeah. So that's what started that, man. I started questioning, the manipulating, the money issue, in the whole apostleship, all of that, man. And so that's what started the Be Not Deceived page. And just I still was like, at the church, and, I was there, but I wasn't there, if that makes sense. And then, we left the bigger version of it and went to a smaller version, thinking, okay, this will be, less, manipulative, or, a little bit more pure. And honestly, down that church, like, I still love those folks. I still visit, because they're real genuine folks. The pastor is probably one of the best guys I ever met. He would do anything for you. But their theology is just bad, man. They just, they have a bad, I guess, a low view of God and a high view of man, with the speaking and declaring and all of that.
Decreeing.
And so, yeah, man, decreeing and declaring. So that was part of my
How does it affect
journey.
your fellowship?
Sure.
How does that affect your fellowship with them now? I mean, you say they're genuine, they're good, down-to-earth people. But, how does that affect your fellowship? I mean, you're in biblical unity with them in one sense, because you still look up to them, or you still look at them as genuine people, but I didn't hear you say they were brothers or sisters. Would you consider
so
them?
No, yeah,
Like,
no,
how's that
I
work?
would. Yeah, okay. No, I definitely think they're brothers and sisters, just, just misguided. And it's funny because when I bring up things, they agree. Like when I show them stuff in scripture, they agree. but then when you bring up, like the biblical usage of, tongues and things like that, then that's when they goes, well, that's an interpretation. That's your interpretation, but
Right.
we're definitely, I definitely believe that they are saved, regenerated, all of that real,
good.
brothers and sisters in Christ, just, on those different issues of, prayers and confessions, just because they're connected to, or they used to be a part of Creflo Dollar's network.
Mhm.
So, that whole idea, flowed down, and they still hold on to that. So, I just think, and honestly, and they are really genuine folks. They just have a bad theology, man. They don't have a good understanding of the magnitude of God and our role, connected to him.
Quick question. When I found out about Creflo Dollar, like a lot of people do, he's going online or you see him on TV, the dude's last name's literally Dollar. Like, he didn't change it to be Dollar.
Oh, I know. I know.
Like, when you inherit that mantle, I'm using their language now, like, how could you not think that you were supposed to be doing what you're doing? Like, that's pretty dangerous stuff when you're so filled with yourself. Anyway, I just that's peculiar to me. That guy's real name is Dollar. So
Yeah,
you then had a
that's his
turning
real name.
point. Did you renounce your apostleship in front of your people at church, or did you just internally say, you know what, I'm gonna give that back, Lord? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take that title out of turn. How'd that look?
So no, I didn't do like a public announcement. And honestly, I thought about how I should do it several times. I thought about doing an open letter video, all of that stuff, addressing a guy in Dallas. But what I actually did is I sat down with, the pastor, and I told him, cause he pretty much just kind of went with it because I came there. Cause that's the thing about, prosperity gospel and charismania is, if somebody say God said, then everybody just jump with it. They'll run with it. They don't care. Like, oh, God said you apostle? Okay, I'm gonna call you apostle. So he just ran with it just because that's what I called, I was calling myself. So I just explained, I was like, hey, biblically I can't be one. One of the requirements is seeing Jesus. I've never saw him. Be a part of the ascension. If you look at the scriptures, how they selected the apostles, I didn't witness that stuff. I didn't have a vision, none of that stuff. And he was like, cool. Like he did not, he was like, okay, like, I get it. He's like, I always question it myself. Like, that's the thing. Like, there's always these little lights here and there, like, you're not as far gone as I thought you were, and he pretty much agreed. He was like, yeah, you're like, I never thought it was right either, but if God said it, then
Goes right back to the default. God said it.
Right.
Yeah, you were probably a guy in step with outward righteousness. Like, people in your life, they could probably come along and say, oh, yeah, he's a righteous man. So there's nothing that would outwardly question that. So you walk into a place and the community's affirming whatever words flowing, and you're like, yeah, I'm an apostle. So when you gave that back, rightfully placed that back onto the Lord's hands, you started to what? Read books, see things online, different pastors were influencing. How'd you get out of the TBN prosperity aspect? So,
part of the team, when we started building the Be Not Deceived, some parts of the team were one guy was always like a Calvinist. Like, I love this perspective though. So I wanted to keep him around, even though at the time I didn't agree with him. So, that influence was there. And then, with the Be Not Deceived thing, is all about proving people wrong, So, I started researching debates, with Calvinism and Arminians, just back and forth. And I mentioned it to one of my coworkers that I was, looking into it, and he happened to be a Presbyterian pastor. And he said, hey, you want to learn about Calvinism? I was like, yeah, sure. I'm thinking I can, learn some way to flip it or whatever. So he pretty much, walked me through the Westminster Confession, and like literally every day during his lunch break, I would sit in his office. He would go through each line, read it, turn to me, ask me if I understood it, do some of the scripture references, and we literally went through the whole thing,
Nice.
in a couple months, and it was amazing. And at the end, I was like, okay, I'm with you. I don't agree with you on baptism, but everything else, I got you. I'm with you.
When did you flip to the 1689?
Oh man, so I mean, it's in my it's I say by birth, man, because it's in my genes, I guess. I grew up, Baptist, so
it's just the biblical expression of baptism.
Of
We're
course,
gonna get some hate from our
course.
presbos, but it's all right.
Yeah, they
And
know what's up.
Would you say would you say it's in the name baptism? But anyway, would you say immersion? That walking a brother through something like the Westminster Confession, comparatively to some of the most contemporary discipleship tools, is probably one of the best tools that the church isn't using. I mean, I say that because I'm using it now with a couple of brothers, and I have it on the coffee table as I'm going through the scriptures with brothers, and it talks about the most fundamental thing. I got one right here, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It just talks about the most fundamental aspects of what we are as Christians, what we are as a body of believers, the church. It outlines the administration of the two ordinances, and so I just wouldn't recommend any other primary tool to try to catechize or disciple a brother who's coming from a place like you. So whomever that was, we give the Lord all the praise, because he pointed you to this historical creed or the standard that's essentially just a biblical expression, and that's awesome. So I just want to pause and praise God for that brother, because he altered your life.
Yeah, Greg Bainey, man. Yeah,
there you go.
That he, like I said, we were co-workers, and actually after after we finished, he actually got a pastoring job in Tennessee, and so I guess kind of lost contact with him. And when I got the bar up and running and got established, I had him on as a guest, and it was awesome.
Sweet. So that was all preordained as well by the Lord, the sovereignty,
Of course,
spreading out his body. So he used that gentleman to sort of, I would say this lovingly, correct your theology, put you in right alignment, give you some sound doctrines. And what did you do after that? How did you spark into your own mold and your own understanding of these doctrines of grace? What did you do to develop that?
Well, yeah. So he pointed me pretty much after that. Kind of pointed me in the direction. He told me about the Ligonier app, the Grace to You app. He talked to me about podcasting and podcast. And so I started like deep diving into those things. Because as much as, most Reformed people love books, like books are cool. I do, read, but, I could give me some audio all day. Like,
Yeah.
like I'm that guy, man. I was the athlete. I wasn't the scholar. So, but so he sent me to some resources that helped develop, between, those apps and YouTube and, a few books. That's how I developed. And I would also, especially when I worked downtown Greenville, I would visit, First Pres, men's Bible study in the mornings, before I go to work. Or
so you got engaged that way. What's your current church situation? Are you going to a Reformed Baptist church? Or are you going to? I'm not currently. I don't have a Reformed Baptist church that I go to. I go to an evangelical, non-associated, non-denom. But where you at? Where you camping out? What's your fellowship look like now?
Yeah, so we were like heavy attenders at Abner Creek Baptist Church, and they were part of the 9 Marks, I guess, network or community, whatever.
Yeah.
But recently the pastor left. Like we were like attending, getting ready to, like link up and be full members, and the pastor took another pastoring job in Kentucky, his hometown. So it kind of got us on pause because we don't know what's coming. So we visit with other churches because we're trying to find a good home, man. Because even after the podcast and everything established, we still stay connected with the pastor that I told you about. That was really, really good, really nice guy. Just because of the fellowship and so many relationships there. So yeah, that's kind of like our default. We get up, was like, oh, well, I guess we'll go to this church today, and and it's funny because like probably I say 60% of the time I'm cringing, but other than that, I'm fine.
Are they making fantastic food after service? Like, is there another reason you're going apart from their good fellowship? 60% is that's a lot. That's a lot of cringe. Just so you know.
Yeah,
You and me.
I know, man. No, yeah, I know, man. And honestly, it's I just need to find, I need to find a good fit for my family, man. And that's
No, I hear you.
that's the sad reality. And I've had people to actually call me out on it because my original bio still had that church, and they looked it up. I was, this is, the church got women pastors, and you call yourself Reformed, and and this, and I was like, well, I'm trying to get out of there, man. Jeez, be patient with me.
Reformed. It's as if I'm reforming as well.
Right.
Yeah. I have
I
similar
get
story
those.
to that. In a sense, I don't like to say this, but those that know me know it's kind of true. I've been church hopping and trying to find that home church for me and my wife, my 3 little girls in our area. And,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard. We have a lot of, in our particular area, we have a lot of larger churches. It's a blessing to have larger churches, but those larger churches tend to have a Arminianist expression in their theology. And so some of that
for
stuff
sure.
doesn't really sit well with me. And you talk about 60% cringe. I cringe a lot because they're just so man-centered in the approach of how salvation is secured. And that for me, I'm just like, that's not going to help when the guy's addicted to porn or with the spouse who leaves. Like, we need to have much more emphasis on God's grace, but also God's finishing work and how he's the one we need to fix our eyes on, and holiness of God. Like, we need to teach that men just aren't capable of sinning. We're capable of sinning far worse than we ever even imagined. And the grace of God is so powerful, we should look to that and thank him. And the preaching styles are kind of, for me, I'm like, I need to find a church body for my family to grow in. So I'm not gonna give you any shade on that one. I totally am in the same camp. I am at a church.
Yeah.
I've been there for about 1.5 years, but it really is uncomfortable when you can't find a good biblical expression at a church. And you find good fellowship, but you get that cringe-worthy feeling when the sermon point comes up, and you're like, that ain't biblical.
Yeah. I believe me, I know that oh too well. And honestly, man, this is probably the first time I'm saying this on the air, man. I would love to relocate back to North Carolina, and I think I could have like a fresh start. Find a good solid spot. If I could do that. I've actually been looking in different areas, so we'll see, man.
So the people on who have heard you in private maybe say that, they haven't heard you say that publicly on the air. So maybe it's breaking news. You might go
That's
back
breaking news, man.
Might go back to North
I want
Carolina.
to relocate, man. Yeah, that's breaking news. A lot of people don't know that, but the urge is getting greater, and my wife is getting on board as well. So
there you go.
Yep.
So another area is like, what's going on with the church in general? Like, what are we seeing? The future of the church. The local church itself is so influenced by things that are not biblical. You just talked a little bit about the prosperity gospel and how that's a worldly, not even a biblical concept. That's a concept from Satan. But I'm talking about the influence of social issues now infiltrating the church to such a degree that to not talk about certain things as if it's the imperative, the mission of the church, you're getting ostracized. At least you're being labeled as somebody who's implicit towards the continuation of current sins or former sins. Like, what's the future of the church look like? And how's your role in that when you're playing? So am I. I'm in the podcast game right now. How are we as influencers trying to not just throw dialogue in the airwaves, but how are we seeing the groundwork change and the people who are receiving our podcast message? What are we trying to warn them about or prepare them for? Like, what's our role? Are we just a parachurch ministry, or what are we doing? Are we media as well?
So where it's going, unfortunately, it's not going to get better. Not on this side of glory, and that's where actually the issue lies when it comes to social issues and addressing those things, because they're looking for heaven results on earth, and then now you go back to some of that prosperity stuff where They want that utopia on earth. But what our role is as far as voices or podcasts, you know, number one, we can't replace, or, you know, we're more of a supplement. So all we can do is suggest. Like we can't necessarily, you know, make I say a direct impact to the local church, but we can provide a narrative or a voice to give them, you know, insight on just fair, not necessarily having to address those issues, but understand that the gospel is the answer, you know, and I think that above all is, like, you know, most important. As far as, you know, our role is just letting them know what the answer is. The answer is the gospel. The answer isn't, you know, necessarily you fixing this, you fixing that. Because honestly, when you ask those folks that are talking about these issues, what's the result, what's the resolve, or what's the answer, you know, they pretty much just restate the problem, you know, and that's not getting us anywhere.
Now, you did sign the statement on the social gospel. So what propelled you to do that? I mean, and then also, what was the backlash, if you felt any? Why'd you do that?
So, I mean, I agreed with it.
Every line, every article, every refuted part in there as well, because they had the affirmations and denials. You agreed with all of it.
If I didn't, I wouldn't have signed it.
That's good to hear. I'm not trying to trick you or put you in the awkward place.
Yeah,
I signed it too, but my name wasn't on the top of the website. I saw yours and I was like, hey, it's Dwayne.
Yeah, that was that was a little shocker to me as well.
So I bring that up because you're already influencing. You already have that type of influence within the evangelical church, specifically in this point of ecumenical calling. So that was a few good men calling out things in darkness to shine light on that, so that there might be some clarity. Because there was a lot before that statement came out. There's a lot of just ambiguity and loose lip, and we still have folks that are still saying things are just insane. They're just insane.
No, and it's not going to change anything. That and it's funny, man, because like there are people that names were on the list that they asked to be removed, and they were nervous, and they called me, and I was like, bruh, like, so first off, man, like I ain't, you know, besides God, I ain't scared of nobody, you know. So I'm going to, you know, if I feel a certain way, that's what it is, man. I'm not worried about, you talk about backlash. I'm not worried about that.
Did you feel any?
You know,
did you have anybody that strikingly came to you and just said, we can't do this fellowship thing anymore? Like, I'm done with you.
No,
did you have anything like that?
They're not that brave, bruh. You give them too much credit. They're not that brave. They're not going to just come. They'll stop talking to you, but I mean, they won't say, you know, this is why. I did get DM'd by one of my former guests, and he pretty much was like, you know, why'd you do it, you know, and he just wanted to know why, you know, and I was like, well, I agree with it, and he was like, but you know, you got this platform, you got this podcast, you got these, you know, this and that, you know, why would you put yourself out there like that? I was like, I agree with it. I mean, I'll stand with truth, man. I don't the podcast platform. It's not, you know, it could be gone tomorrow, man. I don't know. You know, I'm not going to live in fear. I'm not going to, you know, tread lightly just because, you know, even though that's what a lot of big ministries do. You know, they'll hold off. They won't say nothing. You know, I think about like Dr. Duncan. You know, he won't sign it. You know, because part of his staff, you know, totally against it. You know, I'm not going to be that guy. Like, you know, no matter how big this get, you know, I'm going to stand firm on what I believe in, and whatever the backlash is, you know, so be it, you know. I'm good.
I'm good. I like to hear that.
For sure.
I read the whole thing. I read it twice, actually, because I'm a nerd. I went through the articles and the stuff that they posted afterwards. I printed it all out, and I listened to all the John MacArthur's forthcoming articles. They were dripping every week. I don't know if you remember that, but he also was releasing sermons that were coming out. I read it all.
Dude, this thing was like really like planned out. All of this, like, I had it in, I think I read it in August or June. No, July. Like, they met in June. They sent it to a bunch of people in July. They, you know, they talked about Dr. MacArthur was gonna do this, and they asked Daryl to do that, and Tom Buck, they made more changes. So like before it became public, like we were, in the discussion, So yeah, it was all strategic. The timing, the website. Actually, it was delayed. It was supposed to come out 1 week, and they pushed it back another week, and made sure everything was in line. So it was very calculated. I appreciate, the guys that took time to do it.
And those that have actually read it, there are maybe points of dispute when you talk about the language and how maybe a word can be felt when it's read. But ultimately, the end conclusion was just trying to put some plumb lines down, trying to put some groundwork to work towards a greater understanding of what actually has been articulated historically from the gospel perspective. That is the primary. And then the implications, and not inverting those, not making the implications the primary things. And so that for me is somebody who's just a regular dude who's just reading this stuff pulled out. I was so encouraged to just read that the church itself, when that all came together, it wasn't as if it's just random. Like these were men that you just told me like they were laboring together, trying to work this thing out so they would roll out perfectly. They were, and I use it now. Like I use that almost like teaching catechism as well. I'll refer back to that when there are certain things that come up and I'm addressing those situations. I'll go to one of the articles and I'll point to it and I'll quote it, or at least I'll rephrase it because it's a helpful catechistic type of teaching. And I appreciate you supporting that and saying that you're good, that you'll take the heat if it comes. Do you know of any insight? I ain't scared of nobody. Do you know of any insight of what's going on with the Just Gospel Conference? Have you heard about that?
Yeah, of course.
So
they have to. Okay, let me back up. Before the statement, and actually before Just Thinking, and before Daryl started talking about the issue, it was all pro social gospel, pro going in that direction. And actually, the turn happened when Trump got elected, but it was all going towards that direction. So they always had that mentality, that thought. It just got louder and louder and louder. So the Just Gospel Conference is just a response to this side. I know we're talking about unity, but the lines have been drawn, but it's pretty much a response to the response was the gospel is the answer. And, that's why they kind of host that, Just Gospel, like, that's cool, but we need application, but we're not. And it's funny because I said we're not saying not to apply it, but, so it's just a brainchild or, a birth of something just to kind of respond to what we deem is the answer.
Yeah.
It's either the second or third time.
Yeah. This one's getting more attention.
Yeah. I guess it depends on what your feed is like.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
No, I was just going to say because, I think it is probably about the same magnitude as before. It's just there's a little bit more going on now, and that may be why it seems like it's getting attention, I guess.
I hear you on that. It's probably true. And plus, another year rolls around, another group of people are paying attention to that type of a platform.
Exactly.
I'm thankful, though, that there's something in response, something that we can now counter as the conservative biblical view on those issues, or at least a developing conservative biblical view on that, not just on the gospel, but the response to certain social answers. There's one line in there that says, not all cultures are equal. Just flesh that one out. Like, just ask yourself, what's the antithesis to what we currently live in versus another cultural experience? There's a reason why certain cultures migrate to another culture, because they're leaving some sort of depression or oppression. So in that own expression of the migration, or people wanting to come as an immigrant to this nation or to another nation, another functional part of the world, that declares to us there was a problem in that formal culture. So when I read that, I was just like, if you're only reading that in an American context, that sounds arrogant. But if you're reading that in a context where you're trying to flee from a culture of oppression, you'd want to go to one that's more desirable. So not all cultures in that respect are equal. Anyway, so biblical unity and how we are able to obtain that with this new medium through podcast. You and I have come together just this one time talking about the Bible, and I'm admiring your work and stealing your 3 bars. And where do you see the future? You said the future is podcasting. Where do you see the future of podcasting and the church and Christians' responsibility to engage?
I think as more people understand and figure out podcasting, I think it's going to grow as far as pastors using it, and some are already. I think you'll see more churches putting sermons on more this style, talk radio style, interview style, and I think all of those tools are going to be available, to help grow, just God's people through that medium, and the influence I think is going to broaden the audience, and it's funny because that's good in a certain way, and then it's also kind of not good because you want people to have a local pastor that they can eat from every week, and you want that to be your thing. Because I even have a local pastor spotlight on the show, and that was inspired by a question that I asked a guest. I said, "Who's your favorite person to listen to?" or whatever, and it was like, well, I really only listen to my local pastor, and it was like, because see, I had the prosperity gospel mentality where you want the biggest, baddest guy out there. You want to listen to him because, he has the most influence or whatever. And then that answer was like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, we need to highlight these local guys because they are feeding the flock. That's who you need to be listening to. So it's kind of a twofold thing. Like, I love the fact that, the Paul Washer video changed people's lives, all over the world, or the John Piper video changed people's lives. I love that idea and that fact, but I also want people to not look at their pastor as less of because he's not on a platform or he doesn't have a best-selling book and all of that. Yeah,
no, I totally agree. One of the things I've tried to do as a rule is before I go and look for an answer for a topic that I haven't studied before, and it's something new, I'll go to my church's sermon log, and I'll just look through the passages. Like, did my pastor talk about this yet? So I'll go through and I'll make sure to see what he has said so that I may be fed by him. And I just think that's a good rule to just keep in check, to honor your local elders and try to see where their insight is, because that's the one God has given charge over your life to safeguard your soul and shepherd you. And so I'll do that as a default before I go and search like a commentary or another sermon podcast. That's just something I do just out of nature now.
That's
I'll
a good
go
idea.
And I'll find that sermon, and sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, that was just that's a good sermon, but I want to try to be as faithful as possible to that local church before I go out and outsource my grid of information. So that's good. That's a good thing to keep in mind for everybody that's out there, is that these are supplemental tools. These are coming alongside the Bible, coming alongside the local church, and the primary place for people to get discipled is in the local church setting. So
exactly.
We're gonna go into closing thoughts here. But anything new coming up with you?
No, man. Nothing new. The thing that, with me and the bar and the podcast, man, is to be, consistent and solid.
You can get a word from the Lord, week. The apostle in you didn't come. I was trying to set you up.
Nah, nothing like that, man.
But the Lord might be leading you to North Carolina. That is something that might come.
Oh yeah, that's something that might be coming, man.
All right.
Really.
Hey man, I appreciate you coming on. It's late. It's Eastern Standard Time. It's around 11 o'clock, so my energy kind of dropped out a little bit. But I appreciate you coming on and talking to me about biblical unity and how we stay faithful and keep engaged with the local church, even when we have these resources such as podcasts and sermons that we can just download. All right, man. Thanks for coming on. Everybody out there, hold the line.
Hold the line. My bad, I didn't hold it.
That's all right.
I wanted to scream it like on 300.
I got a buddy who
hold the line.
That's actually where it came from. We were in our Bible study, and he just said, "Hold the line." Yeah, man. All right, thank you for coming on, brother. I will talk to you soon.
No problem. Sounds good.
All right.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Shield Wall Podcast. Our goal is to glorify Christ and strengthen the hearts of men. We've got more episodes on the way, so if you liked what you heard, subscribe and share. For more info and articles, visit our website, ShieldwallDiscipleship.org. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search for Shield Wall Discipleship. Thanks again, and until next time, hold the line.